Hey there, baseball fans. Nathan Rohde and Shooter Hunt here with the latest episode of Coffee and Curveballs. Shooter, the early signing period has opened up for the 2020 class. It's not the 1 week like it used to be. It's just a period now that's open, but that means it's time for us to take our annual look at the recruiting classes this year, obviously being 2020.
Absolutely, and some of these classes are going to get crushed by by the draft. But for right now, they're signed in ink, got those nice hats on. The family's getting together all the gear, and we want to talk about it.
Yeah, so we'll be doing that for the next several weeks, running through the Power 5 conferences, also taking a look at some power majors, as Shooter likes to call them. We'll talk about who the schools are probably worried about with when it comes to the draft, who could have an impact, and what the classes look like overall. But we are starting with the SEC East. And so leading off right now, obviously, is a program we always talk about with good recruiting classes, and that's the Florida Gators.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 6 guys in our top 100 right now. And at the top, Zach Veen and Timmy Manning. Veen, a strong left-handed hitter who I think is going to make big jumps throughout this spring, potential draft risk. And Manning, a left-handed starter, potential immediate weekend guy with a big breaking ball. I like both those guys as 1-2 punch. And I mean, Manning, Barco, those are 2 big lefties you could have on campus.
Yeah, it really could. We talk about the draft and who are the Gators going to worry about. Florida does a good job of getting a lot of their guys to campus, but they do lose some of the draft. Veen, you can probably put money on him not showing up. Of course, this time last year, we probably said the same thing about Hunter Barco. He's on campus. But Veen, potential first-round bat. Timmy Manning, a lot of upside there too. Pretty athletic lefty. Has got a pretty good arsenal. I would think that the Gators will probably sweat him out a little bit, but, he could get to campus a la Hunter Barco. But the rest of the class, I think Florida probably feels pretty good about getting them. Kobe Mayo is a strong hitter, corner guy. Certainly going to get looks from scouts, but definitely has, I'd say the needle leans more toward him getting to campus. Jordan Carrion is a really athletic shortstop for me. I really like him. I just think he's one of those down-the-road guys. You let him go prove it for a few years in college. Colby Halter can really hit big time with Team USA. But a guy that you like in the class that has a lot of potential impact is right-hander Chase Centolla.
Yeah, huge fan of Centolla ever since he was at the Future Games a couple years ago. But 3-pitch mix pounds the strike zone. And college guys, especially college coaches, love guys who can come in, pound the bottom of the zone, get after attack hitters, not intimidated as freshmen. He looks like one of those guys. And also Jackson Neza. Those are 2 right-handers who can really pitch, and that's Sully's going to have a good time with.
Yeah, it certainly could. So again, Florida Gators bringing in a strong recruiting class. Nothing new, and obviously if they lose some of these guys, nobody's going to shed a tear for them. But moving up the road to Athens, we've got the University of Georgia Bulldogs. They have 2 guys in the top 100, the top guy being Corey Collins, a catcher. Didn't have a lot of time on the summer circuit last year, or this past summer because of an arm injury. But it's a big left-handed bat. If you look at his profile on our website, you can tell he is a physical dude. 6'2", 200-something pounds, out of North Gwinnett High School. Obviously, there's some power in that bat. So a big recruit for them if he can get to campus. Now, granted, his physicality, premium position, he's going to get some good looks in the spring, especially since he's high school teammates with Josh Schuler. So no shortage of looks for Collins going to happen there. I imagine the Bulldogs will sweat him out a little bit. But then you got Luke Wagner, left-hander. They going out of state for him, obviously, being from Pennsylvania. Competitive lefty, can really pitch and can spin it too.
Yeah, blue-collar kid who I really like to spin with, left-hander who can come in and get some big outs. I think he's going to be able to lock down the back end of that bullpen at some point there in Athens. Can also swing it a little bit. He's a good athlete. I also like Jaden Woods, another left-hander in the low 90s. Think he can make a real jump with the velocity, but it comes out so easy that over time, potential starter, another guy who I think the draft there in Georgia, talent-rich state with lots of scouts watching him, Woods could be a draft potential guy.
Yeah, he certainly could. They'll probably sweat out Fernando Gonzalez a little bit too. He's got an arrow pointing up next to his name. Sean Duncan saw him at Lake Point this fall and was really impressed with the defensive ability behind the plate. So you got a premium defender. If he shows anything with the bat in the spring, obviously scouts are going to be all over him. So I imagine the Bulldogs will sweat that one out a little bit. But a pretty good class for Georgia, and they have a chance of maybe getting all those guys on campus, maybe losing out on one or two. But pretty good look for Georgia. Moving on to Kentucky, two guys in the top 100. You got Ryan Hagenow, a right-hander out of Farragut High School in Tennessee. Helium guy from this summer and fall, looked really good at East Coast Pro. He's got a chance to continue trending upward in the spring. So I'm sure the Wildcats are certainly sweating him. Then you've got a guy that Reuben Church stood out at the Future Games for us, a couple summers ago. I haven't seen him as recently, but he's obviously power to all fields. But now he's starting to hop on the mound and see some mid-90s velocity too.
Yeah, Big Blue Nation's going to want to get those two guys. And I think they're going to sweat them out a little bit, especially Hagenow, who just looks like a starter profile, potential Friday night guy. Really want to get him on campus if you're part of the Kentucky Wildcat staff. Wyatt Hudapole, Ohio kid, big physical right-hander, velocity's continuing to climb. Grant Trinkle, one of my favorite players in the class, just a dirtball, gets after it all over the field from the state of Indiana. Outfielder, can really run. And then one guy at Rhodey that was kind of banged up this summer. I saw a couple years ago. I thought he'd make that jump. Is Seth Logue out of Ohio. Can really spin it. Been hearing word from Jordan Cairo in Ohio that he's been back up into low 90s. I think he's got a chance to make an even bigger jump while on campus.
Excellent. And don't sleep on Ethan Cavanaugh, shortstop out of Kentucky. Physical guy, can really hit. Looks like he's going to be one of those grinders for the Wildcats. So
absolutely.
But moving on to Missouri, nobody in the top 100, but certainly not short on talent. They went to California to get a really good athlete in Isaiah Green, who we saw at the area code games where he really broke out. Certainly could be in that top 100 mix with a good spring. Our California guys love him. That's a big pickup for the Tigers.
Oh, huge pickup. Lots of talent there. Can really run. Sees the ball well. I would say in the SEC, he's probably the biggest risk draft-wise. Being in SoCal, he's going to have eyes locked on him. Had a great summer. Performed well at area codes. And then plus the fact that he's heading all the way east for college. Could be some issues there. But behind him, CJ Sapicki, another ultra-athletic kid, can really run. It's a little raw at the plate right now, but the ball jumps off the bat. And a guy, Rhodey, that I love the last couple of years, who just gets after in games, and the more you see him, the more you like him because he's a big physical kid, some power projection there, is Garrett Rice. Really like what he did. He was with the Royal Scout team, banged some balls, but more than anything in big games he came through.
Certainly so. In South Carolina with the Gamecocks, we got two guys in the top 100. I really like this class. If you're talking just SEC East, this might be my favorite class. As we get into talking about more conferences, this might be one of my favorite classes, just in 2020. But you got Lucas Cook, shortstop from Tennessee at the top. But then I'm a big fan of Jack Mahoney, multi-sport guy, quarterback, had an injury this fall that knocked him out for the rest of the football season, but sounds like he'll be just fine for the spring. But athletic, projectable right-hander. I saw him throw a perfect game at the National Program Invitational at Lake Point. Okay. So definitely a guy that I think can get to campus and become an absolute dude, after 3 years with South Carolina. Jalen Vasquez, probably going to sweat him out a little bit. Arguably the
especially
top one of
love him.
Yeah, one of the top guys in South Carolina when it comes to the draft, but a twitchy shortstop, can really hit, quick hands. You got Brandon Fields, an athletic outfielder. I mentioned Josh Schuler a minute ago as a high school teammate of Corey Collins, out of Georgia. He's going to get a lot of looks. So definitely some guys that you could lose in this class, but not a foregone conclusion. I think you can get all, if not most, of these guys to campus, and it could have a lot of impact for the Gamecocks.
Yeah, and Coach Kingston and the staff there at South Carolina kind of finally getting their roots under them, and it's hard in the SEC to make up time when you come in as a new staff. So this is kind of that first class that they put together that's real strong, that is their class. But Brandon Fields, outfielder from Florida, he's going to be a draft risk. Really like him. But a couple guys from Pennsylvania who will be interesting upside. Travis Lunsman, up into the mid 90s, big physical kid. It's still raw on the mound, but shoot, I wouldn't doubt that there's 100 in there at some point. Jake Madden, who I really liked last fall, has an injury right now, but I think he'll be back, getting on campus, has the ability to spin the baseball with a quick arm. This is a really strong class, especially to get everybody to campus. But at the top, Lucas Cook, huge fan, middle of the order bat.
Nice. Tennessee with the Volunteers, we got one guy in the top 100, and that's Blake Tidwell from Loretto High School, which produced Ryan Weathers a couple of years ago. He had a good summer, certainly trending upward with his draft stock, so a guy that they're going to have to kind of keep an eye on whether or not they can get him to campus. Sherez Butcher, who is from Indiana but is going to play at IMG this spring, certainly a household name. Uber projectable, athletic right-hander, tons of upside, still raw on the mound. But definitely a guy that if Tennessee can get him, man, there's a lot of potential there, but they're certainly going to sweat him out.
Yeah, Coach Vitello's staff, they brought in a bigger 19 class, so this one's a little bit smaller, but getting a guy like Butcher and Tidwell onto campus will be huge for them. Really like Hunter Ensley, the physicality, outfielders who can really swing it. The upside guy who's the potential to make a huge jump while on campus is Sean Scott. Left-handed pitcher, good athlete, struggled some in the zone, but the arm really works. And if they can piece it together, as they've been known to do there at Tennessee, he could be a guy that catches some helium.
Excellent. Wrapping up the SEC East with Vanderbilt. It's got some heralded classes in recent years, but six guys in the top 100, which is nothing new, including the number one prospect currently in Pete Crow Armstrong. Just an instinctual guy from Southern California. We've known about him for years. Not much else you can say about this guy. I'm sure they're banking on him not showing up. But obviously, a good headliner for the class. Robert Hassel, big-time guy with Team USA, arguably the best pure hitter in the class. Probably not going to get him because he's got a chance to be a top 10 pick.
Yes.
But then, after those two guys, now you start to get into who wants to sign versus who really wants to go to Vanderbilt. And I think you can get a lot of these guys to campus just based on Vanderbilt's history. I'm a huge fan of Enrique Bradfield Jr. He is hit every time I've seen him. Can really run, can really defend in center field, left-handed hitter. Just a dynamic player that I think can make a huge impact for the Commodores.
Shoot, if somehow they get Pete Crow Armstrong and Bradfield, you could probably just put two outfielders out there and let them comb side to side for a bit. But it's going to be tough. Bradfield is great all summer, and that speed is just so game-changing type where he can stay in center field as a left-handed hitter. He's going to have some serious draft heat on him. But Gage Bradley, lots of upside, right-handed pitcher. I mean, Scott Brown's done a great job with the arms there at Vanderbilt, and they just produce tons of them. Patrick Riley from New Jersey, huge fall out of him. A late add to this class, but he's up into the mid, climbing into the upper 90s. Those Jersey guys are tough, so he's going to come in there and do work at Vanderbilt. But one of the guys that is a huge intriguing one for me that I saw last winter, Hunter Owen, big physical left-hander from the state of Maine. And Vandy's had success with guys out of Maine. Ryan Flaherty was from there. But if he can kind of get to campus and make those steady jumps, he has that frontline type stuff. But all throughout, this class is stacked, and Vandy always reloads.
Yeah, they certainly do. So obviously they'll sweat some guys out. But again, like Florida, no one's shedding a tear for them if they lose some of these recruits. And definitely a group of guys that can have a lot of impact. So that's the SEC East for you. Next episode will be the SEC West, obviously, and then we will continue on from there through the holiday season with the rest of the Power 5 conferences, as well as a look at some Power Majors. So be sure to stay tuned for a podcast as we will lump the East and West together for the SEC, and we'll go into more depth as opposed to just these quick hits. But as always, for Shooter Hunt, I'm Nathan Rohde. This was Coffee and Curveballs, and until next time, we'll see you guys at the ballpark.